Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to True Crime Wine Wednesday. I missed you guys last week. I'm sorry. I didn't even tell you that I wasn't uploading last week. And part of it's because I had every intention on doing that. And then I was going to take off this week that you're now seeing now. But then I got caught in a wormhole and just like things went crazy. And so here we are. If I look like I'm melting, it's because I literally am. I did a new little setup in a corner of the studio. And then when I sat down to film, I just wasn't feeling it. So I just started picking stuff up, moving pieces from one end to the other. I feel like I got a really good workout in, but right now I'm dying. And I could easily take off my sweater, but like I'm obsessed with it. If you haven't checked out the new merch, this is part of it. This is the Wednesday where she's just drinking her poison and it says Sippendale. I'm obsessed. All right, we have no time to waste. We are going to get right into it. Before we do, I have a quick message for you. Before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor today for sponsoring another video, PDS Debt. I really appreciated hearing your feedback from personally having a chance to work with them and feeling like a weight is being lifted off of your shoulders. Debt can truly feel crippling sometimes, and I feel like it gets to the point where you just don't even know where to start. You've got it coming at every angle. You have outrageous interest fees to deal with on top of the already mounting pressure that you have. And I know you've probably felt like me, feeling like this isn't working. There has got to be a better way for me to pay this off. And PDS Debt has really tried to do that. They have customized 0% interest options for anybody out there that's struggling to pay off medical debt, credit cards, personal loans. They also understand that because of the tough few years that a lot of people have had because of COVID-19, certain types of debt can be reduced or even paid off much faster, which is going to save you thousands in interest. If you're wondering if they can help you out, PDS Debt is offering our qualified Sippendales a free debt saving analysis just for completing their 30-second online debt assessment over at www.pdsdebt.com/Dale. With that, you are going to receive a full breakdown on how to save interest each month, plus the fastest way to pay that debt down. If you are somebody who is making those payments onto your card and you feel like the number is just not moving, this program is definitely for you. PDS Debt rolls all of your monthly payments into one low 0% interest payment. Everyone with over $10,000 or more of debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required, so good or fair or poor credit is accepted. It's really nice to hear about a solution that will save you thousands in interest fees and also help you pay that debt off in a fraction of the time. Like I said, PDS Debt is offering a free debt analysis just for completing their quick and easy online quiz. All you have to do is go to pdsdebt.com/Dale. That's pdsdebt.com/Dale. Take back your financial freedom today by visiting pdsdebt.com/Dale. All right, and it is the return of the riddle. Today's riddle is one that's going to get you kind of thinking. There are two paths ahead, but only one is safe. Two guards know which way is safe, but one guard can only tell the truth while the other can only lie, and you don't know who's who. What is the one question you can ask to find out the safer path? First question would be, which way is safer? Second, which way would you go? Third, are you telling the truth? Fourth, which way will the other guard tell me is safer? Or fifth, what did you tell the last traveler? All right, let's get started. This case has been highly requested by a lot of you, especially when I do cult cases. And I'll admit, I have been really interested in learning more about it, but I thought that, just because of the headlines, I was like, okay, well, what more is there to learn? Because all we see and hear is sex cult. Listen, I get it. If you want to bring attention, you got to grab attention. And oftentimes the salacious headline is how you do it. So what I didn't anticipate is how deep this case actually went and all of the twists and turns. I was definitely deep in a warm, God, wormhole there for a week. I might even still be in there. I don't know. What day is it? Heavy trigger warning today. Human trafficking, sexual assault, suicide abuse, child abuse. Today we are talking about the MLM NXIVM, which essentially was a sex trafficking forced labor cult based out in Albany. Usually when somebody says MLM, you think of more recognized companies like Monat, Beachbody, Arbonne, Amway, Mary Kay. There's some crypto ones flying around now too. Lots of them are health and wellness. And we're finding out now that the structure of these it's very predatory. They aren't designed for everybody to succeed, no matter how much and how hard the people that are on the top try to tell you that it is. I believe statistically there's only like less than or a 1% chance that you would succeed in an MLM. So many people lose their friends, family, money, a lot of money. It's so sad to see. The one thing about these companies is if you're a top leader, you can't succeed without people under you. They say you don't have to recruit, you can just sell the products. And that's not the case. I mean, you can just sell the products, but you would never make a livable wage on that. Unless you're building a team, spending X amount of dollars, and those people under you are spending X amount of dollars, money that they usually don't have, you aren't making money, you're most likely losing a lot. Most of you know that I am very fascinated by like learning on like all the back end stuff of what goes on in MLMs. I was roped into one, two, I guess, for a brief time in my life. And so to see how they work and how it's explained by just like facts and data, it's so sad because you really can see how so many people are just blinded by what happens behind the scenes and they really don't have any idea. They're just told like, oh, you're not working hard enough. Oh, you gotta keep going. What do you have to lose? And it's like everything. If that type of stuff interests you, I would highly recommend going to check out Chelsea Suarez, YouTube, Instagram, all of that stuff is I am Cece Suarez. Hannah Alonso is another one that I really love. Kiki Chanel, I think she's like the OG. She, I think, is coming back. She just had a new video like a week or so ago. So with Nexium, their business model that was that they were an MLM that was focused on self-improvement. They really hammered in like the personal growth, self-awareness too. They ran this thing that was called Executive Success Program, which they refer to as ESP. And they wanted to focus on pitching to successful people, people with influence who wanted to take their success to the next level. Ultimately, what it became was a recruiting platform for a secret society that was called DOS, where they forced women into sexual slavery and even branded them. Having the model literally focused on self-development is so scary because it's always those people who are looking for guidance and looking for an opportunity to level themselves up and they become prey. So this program was created in 1998 by a man named Keith Raniere and his co-founder, a woman named Nancy Saltzman. Keith seemed to have somewhat of a typical upbringing. His dad was an advertising executive. His mother was a ballroom dancer. Allegedly, she was a little bit of a heavy drinker, but other than that, there was not really heavy trauma in his life. At a young age, it was very apparent that he had this knack for influence. Pretty much when he could work, he got involved in Amway, which is one of those OG MLMs. It's still around today. He did very well in it, and then he decided that he wanted to start his own MLM. So in 1990, he started his own, and it was called Consumer Byline. Allegedly, it was the fastest growing MLM at the time. Essentially, people bought a membership and then they had access to buyers who would find things at a discounted rate. It does sound a lot like he was inspired by what he learned in Amway, almost like an Amway Costco. A couple of years later, he also tried to start another MLM. This one was focused more on the health and vitamins. We see that a lot still today. But in 1996, he was permanently shut down when the Attorney General had so many complaints against him. He had been investigated in like 25 states for ripping people off and running this pyramid scheme. Basically, all that happened there, though, was he got a slap on the wrist. The order had pretty much just banned him from promoting, offering, or participating in these kind of distribution schemes, if you will. And then he was also ordered to pay a $40,000 fine, which is a joke because these companies are built on predatory techniques. They know the loopholes. You just go and do it again, but you start putting things in other people's names, essentially. When this happened, a lot of people were understandably suing him, trying to recuperate some of this money that they lost. So he was feeling a lot of pressure. And his girlfriend at the time had gone to one of her friends who was a nurse to ask for some guidance on how she could help Keith. And this friend of hers, it was Nancy Saltzman. I guess when his girlfriend initially approached her, she said, can you help me with my boyfriend? He has these crazy ideas. He thinks he's going to change the world. He thinks everybody's out to get him. He doesn't sleep. He hardly eats. And after she was finished describing him and all of these plans, Nancy says, well, that's easy. He's a sociopath. She agreed to meet with him though. And I guess after 4 days, Nancy goes back to his girlfriend and she's got this almost glazed look in her eyes. And she says something along the lines of, I don't know if you really understand him. He's thinking light years ahead of us and he's going to change the world. So the girlfriend thought, oh, okay, perfect. There's someone else he just roped in. This relationship with Nancy Saltzman really took a turning point in Keith's life. Nancy was the #2 NLP expert in the world. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's a type of hypnotherapy. So terrifying combination to have the two of them together when the intention might not be so pure. Needless to say, the two of them connect, go into business together, and they start their own MLM. At first, they pitched it as a company called Reneri Management Systems. They designed this program geared towards people who were wanting to make a difference in their life, really take their self-development to the next level. They wanted to focus on people's patterns in life that might be holding them back. And then so they thought with Keith's ability to strip all of that down and then Nancy's ability to actually execute the change with her hypnotherapy aspect, they could really get some things going. So they initially pitched to large corporations. They wanted the business people that wanted to, go out on their own and become entrepreneurs. But when they first started approaching these people, they went to Nancy and said, this is a great idea. We really like you, but he's got a really sketchy past and we're not interested. Instead of Nancy saying, okay, that's a red flag, maybe that I should listen to, somebody is seeing something I'm not, she stuck by Keith. They restructured the model a little bit to now focus more on individuals and not just going to like full corporations. And that's when they created Nexium and had this sub program called the ESP program. The courses were a ridiculous amount of money. The lowest one that you could buy was a 5-day program and it was $2,700. The second level was a 11-day program and that was $5,100. And then you could do the top one that they recommended, the 16-day one. This is if you were really serious, hardcore, pretty much just ripping your soul out and starting from scratch. And this one went for $7,650. I'm not going to lie, if I invested this and then went to one of their presentations, I'd have been pissed. I guess they were held in usually rundown hotel boardrooms, and then you just sat there and watched these VHS presentation tapes by Nancy Saltzman. It was like being in elementary school trying to watch those cheesy educational programs almost. That was the vibe I got. On top of the programs that you had to watch, you would do intense personal growth. And the goal was to complete a certain amount of modules so that you could integrate. Integrating means you took your fears, phobias, limiting beliefs, even medical conditions, and you cured them. They promised that once this integration happened, it would never come back again. Their whole belief system is that everything that happens in your life, you're responsible for. All your successes and failures, every thought, every emotion, which to a degree I live by. But what they would really push is that your belief system, it's faulty. Somewhere in your childhood, all of that rewiring and fears and phobias really took control and it holds you back. So they created this system called rational inquiry, and it was supposed to fix you, making you be exactly what they felt like you should be. And the predatory portion of this is that it was very long, a long process, they said, very expensive, because when you paid this $7,000 for 16 days, that wasn't just it. It's not like you just kept going and that was your membership. No, each time you had to keep paying these fees. And then keep in mind that each time you do this, you are so vulnerable. You're exposing, the deepest, darkest parts of your life that you don't like. You're there because you want to change. So once they have that, it's something that they used as a tool to focus on and use against you to continue having you stay and buy packages. The recruitment aspect and I guess MLM-y part of it that I saw was that you had these sashes, and if you wanted to move up in the program, you had to complete a certain amount of modules. You had to bring a certain amount of people in who also had to do the same. And then you get these stripes on your sashes. And once you reach 4 stripes, you get a new colored sash. So you're working up the system to get, to the top sash color. The sashes signified ranks. Every MLM has a rank. Usually they're named certain things just based on the company. They could be gemstones. They could be more business geared, like executive director, so it looks better to some people. More legit if you're saying, oh, I'm an executive director at this company. Keith and Nancy wore sashes, but they were the top. So they had their own leader names. His was Vanguard, leader of the philosophical movement, which was a name on one of his favorite video games. And then Nancy's was Prefect, which was head of the school.
Vanguard.
One thing that really kept them successful is that these people felt like they were getting results. And I think that's what the draw is in most of these cases. You usually get sucked in because you feel or see something that you like about the company or the product. What you don't even realize is as you're trying it out, you're already on somebody's radar to get pulled in. And that's just when it's not okay. Working hard for something and having dreams and wanting to improve yourself and being passionate about something, even if it is a product, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's actually really important. But when it's coming from a model like this, where you have recruiting and ranks and quotas that you have to have, and if you don't, you lose your ranks and you drop and you've got all of this pressure, absolutely not. Run. You are just a number to somebody. If you like sales, if you like to talk about things that you love and want to get compensated for it, or you have a desire to leave the job or a position that you're in right now, bro, do affiliate marketing. It's completely different than something like this. You're not tied down to the be all end all one product. You don't have to bring people in. You find a product, you talk about it, and the brand pays you to do so. The brand does not say, oh, we will not pay you unless you have this many people who buy or this many people who sign up under you. That's not how it works. When a brand reaches out and wants to work with somebody, that person talking about it gets paid regardless. There's no pressure for me to attain a certain amount of quota or have people also try to pitch this product that support me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I never want somebody to feel pressured. I never want to feel like my livelihood is dependent on what you buy from me. And your leaders in these structures, these MLM structures, they shouldn't be the be all end all. And a lot of them are. They have such a huge influence and they live this luxury lifestyle saying, I got here because I worked so hard. And we're finding out now from a lot of people who are leaving these companies that some shady things happen behind the scenes where they are pooling money to keep people's ranks high while everybody underneath, they're just left to just drown. In this one specifically, in Nexium, Keith was definitely looked at more than just this inspirational leader. He was pretty much considered like a god. They really hammered into the program that he was a literal genius who had scored like 240 on an IQ test. They're so lucky to have him so involved in the company. He's fixing us. His accolades and his intelligence was something that was really focused on. They said he was speaking 3 languages before he could even read. He had triple majors in math, biology, computer sciences. Allegedly, he barely scraped by on his exams. They said, according to Guinness Book of World Records, he was the top scorer on this IQ test that was given. This test is an unsupervised test that is like 48 questions or something like that. It's not properly validated, and Guinness Book of World Records no longer validates this test. The list goes on, though. That was definitely what was the draw for people. Another big feature was that they recruited pretty wealthy and influential people. They wanted the highly successful entrepreneurs coming, celebrities, socialites. A well-known name that was very high up in the company was a man named Mark Vicente, who's the director of the documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? So he was a big draw for the celebrity world. And one of his first fellow film colleagues that he brought into the program was a Canadian actress named Sarah Edmondson. They had met while they were on a cruise, and Sarah was on this cruise with a boyfriend at the time who she was in a rocky relationship with, and she went on the cruise thinking, okay, I'm going to be taking this opportunity to figure out what my path is, where I should go. Her relationship was not doing well. She also wasn't seeing the results that she wanted in her acting career. So she thought, I'll get the answers on this cruise. And so she meets Mark and really respected him just as a director. And she apparently had this cough. And while they're talking, he asks her a very self-reflective question that he learned in this ESP program. And he says, what do you have to lose if you lose the cough? So she said she thought about it, and then she realized that she associated being sick with getting attention. Her whole life, if she wasn't feeling well, you always had the attention. Everything was a lot better even if you weren't feeling well. And so since things were at a rough patch in her relationship, she thought on it, realizing, oh, I'm trying to get my boyfriend's attention by me being sick and needing him to cuddle me. She said once she realized this, the next day her cough started going away. So she's really taken back. She already respects him so much, and they get to chatting, and he casually talks about how his life has changed because he met, one of the smartest people in the world, and he's helping him with his self-development and giving him these tools to help other people like he had done with Sarah. Naturally, she's curious, wants to learn more, but really wants to also build more of a solid friendship with Mark because she really did respect him. He tells her about the course and that she can sign up and that there's the different levels. She said she really didn't have the money to do it, but remember, she said she was going to go on this cruise to figure out what her next path in life was going to be. And so she thought, this is a clear sign. I got to go for it. She signed up, she did the 5-day course, and from there, she was hooked. She quickly climbed the ranks alongside with Mark, and they were so successful that they were actually able to open up their own center in Vancouver. Over time, more celebrities became involved. You probably saw the headlines where Kristen Snyder from Smallville was in it. Catherine Oxenberg from Dynasty was in it for a little bit with her daughter India. Emiliano Salinas, who was the son of one of Mexico's presidents, was a member. And then the face I think that we see the most in the headlines is Allison Mack, who was also an actress in Smallville, and she became heavily involved. As the members grew, they started adding different programs to NXIVM itself. So NXIVM was the business, the MLM, and then from there was other subcategories, kind of like if you have one company, we'll say Monat, and then you originally are just selling shampoo, but then you get on the skincare and all of those, collagen and whatever. So it's kind of like that, but with courses that you can take. They had some for yoga and fitness, for kids, for just men, just women. And so that's really how they were able to keep their members in, keeping the money. It wasn't necessarily like a monthly commitment that a lot of MLMs are. This was just huge investments, and if you wanted to unlock your potential and get to the next stage, you had to pay for this course, and then once they completed that, well, they got to make more. So that's kind of how people stayed within it and then started bringing people because they think they're seeing results, plus they want to get those different colored snazzy sashes. The catch was once you started enrolling people and getting those sashes and the levels, you did have a commitment to get paid. In order to get your commission, you had to enroll at least one person every single month. And remember, the smallest package was $2,000. It's just not attainable. And over time, obviously, members were starting to become concerned. They're in crippling amounts of debt. Some of them were able to just cut their losses, get out. But then you had members like Allison Mack who were fully consumed. She saw Keith like a god. She made this vow of devotion to him. She was having her calories tracked by him. She wasn't sleeping. And so Mark Vicente's wife, her name was Bonnie. She was also an actress. He had brought her into the program and eventually they fell in love, got married. She started noticing these types of things. Even herself, she's like, I'm sleep deprived. I'm supposed to be available for these people at any hour of the night. I'm shrinking before my eyes. I'm seeing women turn almost zombie-like, and then you're told if you're not succeeding, you're doing something wrong. Oh, it's your limiting belief. You're not trying hard enough. There's people out there. You're just holding yourself back. If you're too negative, what do you expect? For a while, she believed it though. She did say from the get-go, when it came to Keith, she felt very icky around him, but she thought, okay, I'm just going to roll with it. She didn't like that he kissed everybody on the lips, like everybody. But like so many others, she did think, okay, I am seeing a change in myself. And this right here is just me overreacting. You know, I got to overcome this limiting belief. But as she sees more and more red flags, it's like, no. That's the intuition, baby. That's not a limiting belief. That is your intuition screaming, telling you to get out. And she did. So she leaves and it's just a shit show. At first, Mark wasn't seeing things the way that she was. She straight up was saying to him, this is a cult. And he's like, I don't see it as this, this is a business model. What do you mean this is a cult? Cults are like Charles Manson or Heaven's Gate. But over time, more and more people started leaving. And then those people who left started talking to each other. And this is when they found out that people's lives were literally being ruined. It wasn't like one day they woke up and said, okay, it's been fun, guys. Bye, gotta go. Anybody who left was being harassed at all hours of the day and night. Their phones would be ringing off the hook in the middle of the night just to keep them up. Their credit cards were being fraudulently charged. Some people just had their medical insurance canceled without even knowing about it. They were being stalked. It was really scary stuff, but nobody who was still in the group knew about this. All they would know is, oh, so-and-so left, not because they wanted to, but because we had to let them go. They were stealing stuff. They're trying to take our material and make their own MLM. In reality, there was a new program being started. It was within NXIVM, and it was only Keith and a select few females that knew about it.
I don't believe in equality. Equivalence maybe, but not equality. It would be awful to say that men or women are equal.
Right. It was a women's only group called DOS, which stood for Dominias Obsequious Stap Sororium, which I guess loosely translates to master over the slave woman. Now, you had to be invited in order to join, and if you wanted to even just hear about the group when you were approached by one of the other members, you had to provide collateral to make sure that you were loyal and serious. This collateral was something that was going to potentially be very damaging to you, your life, your family, if it were to get out. As this is getting started, behind the scenes, Mark is starting to talk to some people that have gotten out just to see their perspective because he wanted to hear their side and not just hear from it from the inside, which is very smart. And he starts hearing from the rumor mill that there's this other group, like something shady is really going on. Why doesn't he know about it? Because he's one of the top leaders. He's like on the board of directors. So it gets to the point where he calls Keith out and he says, I'm being told that something's going on. What's up? Keith just denies it. He says, oh, yeah, I did approve another group for Allison to get going, but I'm not involved. It's women's only. I'm not privy to anything that goes on in it. And Mark's like, no. You are privy to everything. This is your group. You know everything that's going on. He knew he was being lied to. He had been with Keith for 12 years in this company. And I can't imagine coming to those realizations because that's the sad part. The majority of people who get involved in these have good intentions. They see the good. They don't realize that it's other people who are taking advantage of them. They want to see the vision. They want to keep going. They know they can get there. But there has to be a point where people realize that the way something is set up has nothing to do with your passion, your drive, your capabilities. It's just designed to fail. So when he resigns, he reaches out to Sarah. I mean, at this point, they're business partners. They're best friends. He says he's leaving and he just wants her to keep an eye out because he wants her to be safe. He tells her, I found out that there's this secret group. I don't know too much about it. But as he's giving her the information of what he knows, her responses are very cautiously phrased. And he knows her well enough to know, okay, she's very well aware of this group. I think she's in it. He just straight out asks her, are you a part of this? Did you give collateral? And thank goodness she trusted him enough to say, yeah, she's a part of it. She got in it. She gave the collateral. But not only that, she was branded with Keith's initials. Her collateral, it was so sad. She didn't have any. She's a open book, lived a drama-free life for the most part. But her best friend was Nancy Saltzman's daughter. Her name was Lauren. So Nancy Saltzman being the co-founder of NXIVM with Keith, her daughter Lauren was who she thought her best friend. And she's the one who approached her with this. And before she could tell her anything, she said, I need you to give me collateral. And she says, I don't really have any. So Lauren tells her just to make something up. So Sarah makes up this awful story about her husband being a terrible man who abuses their child. She hated her parents. They were just the worst people to ever face the earth. And all of this is just the opposite of actually what her life was. That was just for her to get into the group. So then when she gets in, it's presented to her kind of like a sorority. Lauren told her, you're basically the leader of your pod. There were other sisters on the same level of pods with you. At the top was Keith. And then you were to recruit other sisters under your pod, but you'd call them your slaves and you were the master. The recruitment angle of this was, the more sisters that you brought in and then them bringing people in, you move up and you become the grand master like Keith. Sarah said she really didn't like the whole slave master thing. I don't blame her. But when she brought up the concern, it was, it's just a metaphor. This is just like the sorority thing. It was kind of explained like since this was a big secret, that added to the mystery, the taboo of it. Since Lauren's her best friend, she trusts her. She's like, okay, not really sure, but she agrees to join. And then when you join, you have to give even more collateral and it just has to get more intense. So the next part of it was her just taking nude, provocative photos for Lauren to keep. At this point, she now becomes Lauren's slave, and she's got to check in with her every day, all day pretty much. She has to let her know when she's eating, what she's eating, when she's awake, asked to go to sleep. Then after a few weeks, she's told to come to Albany from her home in Vancouver to do initiation. It was pitched to her that it was just going to be this fun sorority thing and they were going to get these matching tattoos. But again, she wasn't allowed to tell anybody, not even her husband. She just told him she was going to do some stuff for, ESP out there where the main headquarters were. The night of the initiation, she arrives at Lauren's house. She's blindfolded and then stripped naked and left in a room. She can then sense that other people are also being escorted into the room, but they're all blindfolded. No one knows who's there. Then once they were all in the room, they were allowed to take off their blindfolds to reveal who the other sisters were. And they pretty much knew each other because they were all, recruited from the program for the most part. And they're just awkwardly sitting there naked and just told, it's fun. This is part of the pushing yourself to get out of that discomfort, just push yourself through it and it's just going to make you a better person. Then they get blindfolded again, still naked, and they're put in a van and taken to another location. When they get there, I don't know what the point of the blindfold was because everybody knew it was Allison Mack's house, and they learn that they're not getting these cute little matching sorority tattoos. They are there to be branded. They had to lay on a table naked, held down, and with a cauterizing pen, they were burned with this symbol right above their pelvic region. And this symbol was supposed to represent the sky, the mountains, and the river. So after over 30 minutes of going through this excruciating pain, there was no numbing cream, no anesthetic of sorts. If you looked to the side of the symbol, it clearly was Keith Raniere's initials. Pretty much right away, Sarah realizes, okay, this is terrible. What the heck have I gotten myself into? The pressure to recruit more girls and have more people under you for that, grandmaster position was intense. She's like, I don't want slaves. I thought this was going to be a fun sorority thing. I'm already creeped out about the branding thing, and now this is getting worse. Plus, she was told, every other week that she needed to provide more collateral. So she's doing like more things that can damage her life just to stay in this thing. It wasn't adding up to her. She's like, what is the draw? And she eventually finds out that she is participating in recruiting people to become sex slaves for Keith Raniere and Allison Mack.
One of the key principles in Jeunesse was understanding that the main difference between men and women was that men are designed genetically to not be monogamous, spread their seed, and women genetically are designed to be monogamous.
Keeping a rotating group of 15 to 20 women with whom he maintains sexual relationships.
It was a whole thing when she found out. She had to get Mark to tell her husband because she was too scared. And he goes and he confronts Lauren. Like, what the heck is going on? What are you doing, bro? This is absolute insanity. You actually thought that this was a good idea to brand people, to recruit people, make people give you collateral. This is blackmail. This is trafficking. Allegedly, after he went to her, she calls Sarah and she's like, girl, this was a secret. Why did you tell him? Like he wasn't going to notice the branding on her. And she says, this is why we didn't want guys to be involved. They think they need to become involved. They think they need to save us and that this isn't something that we want. I mean, you obviously want it if you kept giving me collateral. And it's those mind tactics and mind control. It's just so sick to try to gaslight people. And this is really common, maybe not to this degree, but if you go to somebody with a concern or somebody in your family goes to one of these members and it says, something's wrong here. We have no more money. Please stop telling my wife to buy your candles or whatever. These leaders will tell the people under them, oh, like that person doesn't support you. They want to hold you back. They don't want you to be the best you can be. They just need you stuck where you are. Many will even say, if you don't have people in your life that support you, you shouldn't have them in your life. Whether that's your family, your spouse, your best friends, they'll say that to you. Because Sarah was married, also had a pretty good head on her shoulders when she wasn't being completely like in the cult fog. She wasn't privy to a lot of what was going on. But with the other recruits that were on the top, like Lauren and Allison, they would recruit really young, impressionable girls. They pitch it like they were these top leaders of this extremely successful MLM, and to have them as your coach or your master, like it was an honor that they were going to improve your life. This was just all a part of the initiation, getting uncomfortable, being vulnerable. And these enrollees would have to ask permission for anything they did, including, and most focused was their caloric intake. They needed to send a picture of their food to their master, ask if they could eat 45 calories. May I please have 45 calories, master? And may I please have 100 calories, master? And their calorie limit was so low that they were becoming so malnourished that a lot of their periods were stopping and their hair was falling out. Members from the outside who had gotten out and were starting to see this, they noticed a pattern. And this was specifically screaming Keith all over it. He had been in several long-term relationships within the group and he liked his women a certain way. And it was extremely thin, like unhealthy thin. And I think that's important to consider because you're malnourished, you're not getting a lot of sleep. I think when you just hear a story like this, you think that could never happen to me. But you also have to consider that this is years and years and years and years of somebody who has created something to completely strip you down, make you so vulnerable. Specifically women, if you were confident or assertive and successful, he would make you feel like you were egotistical and that your pride was too large and that you had to really strip it down. So all of these bright qualities that people had, they were just knocked completely down to the ground and then just felt like they had nothing to do but rely on him for the direction to become this person that they're supposed to be. So by the time DOS came around, these women literally were just walking zombies, just having no idea what to do in life, so insecure, just very lost and relying on him. And he was crafty. He knew what to do. He had very rich, powerful people funding everything. So when people were coming out of this, I want to say fog, but that's not even powerful enough. It's like they were coming back to earth from hell. And it was hard to pin things specifically on Keith, saying like he was the one responsible, because this business, this company that people were going after and suing, trying to recoup at least some money since all of their souls had been sucked out of them. Everything was mostly under Sarah and Claire Bronfman's names, who were the heiresses to the Seagram's alcohol fortune. So any lawsuit that came their way, Keith would explain it away. Oh, they're liars. They're trying to take us down because they're not working hard enough. And these women would pay it off. Ultimately, it was the media that did its thing. A lot of the members that left would reach out to certain news programs, just trying to do their best to get their story out there. One man named Frank Parlato wrote a piece on the cult when he was actually fired from it. He was hired to do some cleanup work as a publicist, and he actually uncovered that some embezzling was going on and thought that Keith was responsible. So once he found that out, he got tossed. So after that, he became this investigative journalist with the sole purpose of wanting to take this cult out. Unfortunately, when you're just starting like a blog or something like that, which he was doing, it's hard to gain a lot of traction. He also had the obstacle of having people in there who were very influential and were able to just kind of explain it away and discredit him. So it wasn't until the Me Too movement happened that it really catapulted the story, because when that went viral, Sarah decided to share her story and showed this image of her being branded. From there, it just exploded. I think Dateline did a piece on it. 2020 did a piece on it. She was on the front page of the New York Times. So now that it had national attention on it, the walls were closing in and Keith had fled to Mexico. Like I said, one of his members was the son of the ex-president out there. So he had quite a bit of control out there. And after that one story took off, more started coming out about him, and it was even worse than you can imagine. In 2012, the Times-Union did a piece on Keith exposing him for abusing underage girls. There was one woman who came forward who wanted to be anonymous that said in 1990 her mom worked for his MLM and said he used another employee to befriend her, be somebody that she looked up to, basically groom her for Keith to abuse her, so that when he wanted to sleep with her, the friend was like, oh yeah, this is normal. And this 12-year-old girl thought that it was something that she was supposed to do. Thankfully, he was captured in Mexico. He was actually captured in this villa with all of his top pyramid masters. And they were in the middle of a recommitment ceremony with him, solidifying the commitment to him orally. And then just when people thought, okay, it can't get any worse, his trial came. At the trial, it came out that there was even more abuse of 3 sisters that were groomed by Keith. With these sisters, Keith had the entire family under his control and had them living out in Albany, where his, main headquarters were. They were really in deep. The oldest sister became the mother of his second biological child. He had another biological child with another member, but she fled. The middle daughter was groomed by him at a young age and then began a sexual relationship with him the day of her 18th birthday. And then the youngest he started abusing when she was only 15 years old. What the youngest went through is absolutely sickening. I'll refer to her as D. She said that Keith told her and her sisters that he had mystical powers. He could heal you through intercourse. And you had to make a commitment to him, to only be with him. Because as they got older, if they had relations with anybody else, that could hurt him and take away his powers. The sisters went through hell with him. There was a time that he tried to be intimate with 2 sisters. There's also hospital records to prove that he had impregnated each of the sisters and all of them had abortions. And Dee said that Keith forced her into involuntary solitary confinement at her parents' house for 2 years. And this was all because he found out she was interested in another guy. To the family, Keith told them that he had caught her stealing and that he and Lauren were going to help fix her. So they said part of this fixing was that she had to stay in a room with blackout blinds, and the only people that were allowed to speak to her were himself or Lauren. The family couldn't even go in and check on her and see if she was okay. When she was finally allowed to leave, it was after 2 years, and her father was just allowed to bring her to the Mexico border and leave her there with less than $80 and no identification. The abuse that these girls went to, it lasted a long time in their lives, into their adulthood. And it got so bad to the point where they didn't want to live anymore. They wanted to take their lives. And they're not the only members who had been driven to that or made to look like they had been driven to that point in life. There are a few of Keith Raniere's girlfriends or women in his life who met untimely deaths. Two of the most suspicious are a woman named Gina Hutchinson, who was found with a gunshot wound, and Kristen Snyder, who had last been seen at a NXIVM event and was kicked out and never seen again. Gina was the first woman who had ever publicly accused Keith of rape when she was only 14 years old. She said that he started grooming her when she was in grade 8 and he was 23 years old. She's described as a very sweet and compassionate person. She had this soft spot for animals, and her family said she'd always bring strays home. Her sister said that she was very gentle and soft. She had this very soothing soul. So when she finds out that she dies from a gunshot wound, she thought that it didn't make sense because it was such a violent contrast to her demeanor. What was told to her sister was that in October 2002, when she was 33 years old, this was right after she went public with her allegations to Keith, she was found dead on the property of this monastery. This was located in Woodstock, which was only about an hour and a half from where Keith lived in Albany. And her sister was made to believe that this was a self-inflicted wound to her mouth with a 22 gauge shotgun. Frank Parlato did this special on Prime, I believe it's on. It's called The Lost Women of NXIVM.
We know that this is a guy that will do evil things to women.
Definitely check it out. There's also a 9-part series on Crave that is really good to listen to if you want to hear a lot of the recordings of this guy and a lot of the teachings. He recorded everything. He wanted all of his classes recorded, so there's a lot to watch. But Frank had this test conducted based on her measurements, and without any sort of tool to reach the trigger, it would have been physically impossible for her to shoot herself the way that it's believed she did. She would have needed either somebody else to do it or had some form of branch or something like that that could reach the trigger. She was never tested for gunpowder residue. The scene wasn't, so we don't even know if it happened there. And when she was found, there was absolutely no investigation, so all of that evidence is not available. Then there was 30-year-old Kristen Snyder. She had moved to Alaska in 1999 to pursue a career as an environmental consultant. Her goal was to have a really successful business. She wanted to be an entrepreneur, and so she found her way to ESP for that self-development. She's described as very fun-loving, a hard worker. It would not be uncommon for her to just want to take courses and do something to better herself. So on February 7th, 2003, a missing persons report was filed when she was last seen being taken out of a ESP seminar at a local hotel. According to witnesses, she was removed from the ceremony because she was acting erratically. Her wife was actually there at the time and thought, okay, well, she's gonna let her calm down a little bit and then I'll talk to her when she gets home. But later on that night, she never arrived, so she went to the police and filed a missing persons report. 2 days after that report was filed, her truck was found 2.5 hours away in Anchorage. In the truck, there was what appeared to be a suicide note, and then there was another note that said, "No need to look for my body." The suicide note was definitely alarming. It spoke about NXIVM. It said, I'm a part of this group called NXIVM. They shut down my internal being. She said basically she was still like an external shell, but everything inside of her was shutting down and her organs were rotting. So when investigators find her truck, they're looking around the scene and they see there's this shed that keeps a couple kayaks for people who live on this property that's by the river there. I'm probably explaining this terribly. The people who own the shed said that there was 2 kayaks that were in there, and when the police came, there was only 1. So one of them was missing, and since they were close to the river, they believed that she had taken this kayak out and drowned herself, made it capsize. The whole thing didn't make sense to anybody who knew her. She was described as a very stable person.
Chris was a great person, super nice, smart. She's a very close friend of mine. She was a stable person. This was so unbelievably out of the ordinary in terms of behavior for her.
She was being trained to do search and rescue for something to have under her belt. Like I said, she liked to constantly be evolving herself and learning. So being involved with NXIVM itself wasn't out of character for the self-development, but that control factor of it seemed to catch her completely off guard and took control of her really fast. She had only signed up a few months prior to her going missing. She signed up in November 2002 and went missing February 2003. She had already done her first intense 16-day course and was on day 10 of the second 16-day course that she was doing to, continue the self-improvement. And the situation leading up to the event was definitely concerning. She had joined with a friend, and the friend started to notice how quickly she was being drawn in. She said that whole aspect of right away where you have to become very vulnerable, expose yourself, share your deepest, darkest secrets. It was really affecting Kristen. She was out of sorts. She was really struggling, and her friend had gone to one of the leaders and said, I think she needs help. I think I'm going to take her to get an evaluation because this isn't the Kristen that I know. And she said after that day that she said that, they were always kept apart. They kept her away from Kristen so that she wouldn't say anything to her. She was instructed to stay with a different leader over here while they over in the other side of the room or in a different area of the headquarters had Kristen. When she went missing, it was all hands on deck. Like I said, she was training to do this search and rescue. So she was really close with people who were in that industry, and they joined the police search for her. They had volunteers looking for her. They had people in the air, on the ground, in boats. And 4 days after the search began, it was called off because there was no trace of her. To those who are close to her, it's really concerning because the harbor master of this area said that out of 15 bodies that have gone missing since he's been harbor master, all of them have been found except for Kristen. And there hasn't been even any trace of a kayak, a paddle, which is meant to float. So her loved ones definitely have a lot of questions. They don't think that it's not possible that she could have possibly taken her life, but it doesn't make sense for her to drive 2.5 hours away to Anchorage and then capsizing and having no remnants of her ever being there. Their thoughts are that there could have been some form of coercion, something that she was suggested to do closer to home. Then this note was written, put in her truck. The truck was dropped off, and that was just kind of planted there to throw the search off. It's believed she was wanting to be silenced because she was a liability. Weeks before her disappearance, she had gone to the Albany headquarters. Ex-members say the day she arrived, she was so excited, very happy, joyful, pumped to get going. And then people believe at some point Keith entered the picture. It's said that he wasn't down with lesbians. He didn't like the thought that there were women out there who didn't want to be with him, that weren't attracted to him. I mean, newsflash, people I don't think were attracted to him. I think it was the manipulation tactics, Keith. So there's a chance he tried these tactics with her, like, oh, if you sleep with me, I've got these powers. He liked to say this, that he used these powers and transferred energy to you that way. And that maybe she thought this was going to help her, or he could have forced himself on her. Regardless of how that happened, it is believed that there was a physical interaction that happened, because when she came back from there, she started telling people that he had impregnated her. In fact, when she was taken out of that last meeting, it's because multiple times she had disrupted the meeting by screaming, saying, "He impregnated me. He got me pregnant." Also, on this program that I watched, The Lost Women of NXIVM, there was a handwriting expert that did look at the note that was left in her truck. But unfortunately, there was only a limited amount of samples that had Kristen's confirmed writing on it. I believe it was just a Valentine's Day card to Kristen's wife. And so based on just the small sample that they had, it wasn't enough to definitively say that the note wasn't written by her, but certain characteristics that she wrote with, I think one that he pointed out was the way she did her eyes. They were very distinct, and the eyes in the suicide notes were nothing compared to what she usually did eyes like. So the expert said it definitely didn't appear to match, but she wasn't able to 100% say this absolutely isn't her. And to this day, Kristen's body has never been found. Now, if you want to go even deeper, there are two of Keith's very close live-in long-term girlfriends who also tragically died. These two were both diagnosed with cancer, but it's alleged that there's a possibility that they had been subtly poisoned through a long period of time. The first girlfriend was Barbara Jeske, and she's looked at like the one that kind of kept people in the group, kind of like the mama bear. She was very bubbly, very nurturing, and she just drew people in with her charisma. His other girlfriend was a woman named Pamela Kafritz, and she was his ride or die. They'd been together for over 30 years. Keith was the be-all, end-all for her. She was a very free spirit and very funny. Now, when these women were both told that they had cancer, Keith said that he was going to be the one that was responsible for their treatment. He was going to be the one decided what they were going to take, how much they were going to take. So the reason why it's speculated that they could have been poisoned is because there was another woman who lived with them also. She had developed bladder cancer. When she left, she was able to get treatment and be cured. But she happened to have hair from the time that she was living there, because she had this long hair and she cut it and she kept the hair. And so she was able to have this hair submitted and tested. And the test results came back with dangerous levels of bismuth and barium, like substantially more than what normal heavy metal exposure should be on a human. I mean, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it. So the way I saw it was two angles if he was responsible. One was that he was trying to flush out his older ride or die ladies for the new ones that he was trying to recruit in. People who left said it definitely did look like women were coming in as the olders were coming out, and it was like fresh meat that he was training. Another thing, though, that I thought of as a different angle was he wanted to be also seen as this guy who is this genius and gonna change the world. And there were people who were in court that testified against him that said that they felt like they were being used as experiments sometimes. So, I mean, if you're the guy who cures cancer, that's a lot of power, control, influence that you're going to have. So I thought it could be possible he was creating this cancer or severe illnesses so he could be the one to cure it, since he wasn't letting them get traditional treatment. It was he was responsible for everything. Those are my theories. I don't know. What I do know is he's not able to hurt any more people. He was sentenced to 120 years in prison. He has quite the charge list. He was charged with sexual exploitation of a child and possession of that type of pornographic material. He was charged with sex trafficking, attempted sex trafficking, identity theft, trafficking for labor and services, forced labor, conspiracy to alter records for use in an official proceeding, sex trafficking conspiracy, forced labor conspiracy, racketeering conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy. Allison Mack, Claire Bronfman, Nancy Saltzman, and her daughter Lauren were also charged after he was arrested. Allison Mack was sentenced to 3 years in prison and 3 years probation. She also has to complete 1,000 hours of community service and pay a $20,000 fine. Claire Bronfman pleaded guilty to conspiracy to conceal and harbor illegal aliens for financial gain and fraudulent use of identification. She was given 5 years in prison, plus she had to forfeit $6 million. On September 30th, 2020, she was sentenced to 6 years, 9 months in prison by a federal judge, and she was also fined $500,000. Nancy Saltzman also pled guilty. She pled guilty to racketeering and was sentenced to 42 months in prison. She was also given a $150,000 fine for racketeering conspiracy. Her daughter Lauren, who was the top of this DOS trafficking ring, she was given a jail sentence, but she was able to get out of it, and the judge only gave her 5 years probation. So she's not even in jail. Now, I was feeling a certain type of way about these head women here. Then I started thinking about something that I learned from my girl Chelsea Suarez. Go see her, CC Suarez on YouTube. And she talks about this thing called undue influence on her channel. You basically are influenced to say and do things that you never thought that you would, all in the name of recruiting and so that you can try to make a living and survive. I'm sure you know somebody who's in an MLM, or maybe you've been in one or you're in one and you're sitting back and you're just like, well, yeah, I can think of a time where something happened and that wasn't cool. But when you're being fed the vision, coupled with the desperation that you have and pressure to make any amount of money, you start to get sucked in and pulled into these tactics. Unfortunately, what happens is the longer you're in, the more influenced you become, the more you start to do and say things that you just never thought you would. And that's what's starting to come to light, which is nice because I think so many people feel like failures, but a lot of these companies are just extremely predatory. The people at the top make you feel like you're not succeeding because it's a you problem. You're not trying hard enough. You don't want it bad enough. You're not a good enough leader to make your team successful. And there's also another aspect of it too, where you have this sense of community and it kind of keeps you in longer. You've got these great friendships and you're loved bomb and you're told you're doing great and you can do it. Just keep pushing. But the second you leave or you have a question that something might not feel right, you're exiled. You know, they're no longer your friends or your family. Like, that's a lot of them are like, these are my family. It's like, no, they're not. They need you because they need you to stay, to keep pushing, making your team build, because if you fall, they fall. So yeah, that's where I've been for a while, you guys, just out of my mind in the rabbit hole that is NXIVM. Absolute garbage. I truly hope that there's some way that there can be answers for Gina and Kristen's family. It's really sad that I think for a long time people were even scared to question because they didn't want anything investigated or them to have a target put on them. So I think there are possibly some people out there that might be able to help once they get to that point. It's just a matter of them getting there and not being scared to come forward. I do feel like somebody knows something. That's where I'm going to leave you guys today, though. I'd love to hear your theories. Thank you so much for sticking along with me on this. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. The answer to today's riddle, quick reminder. There are 2 paths ahead, but only one is safe. 2 guards know which way is safe, but one guard can only tell the truth while the other can only lie, and you don't know who's who. What is the one question you can ask to find the safer path? Is it which way is safer? Which way would you go? Are you telling the truth? Which way will the other guard tell me is safer? What did you tell the last traveler? And the answer is, which way will the other guard tell me is safer? According to logic, both guards will answer with the path that's dangerous, thereby revealing the safer path. All right, I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.